Hello, everybody. Good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are. Yeah, I guess, okay, let me go ahead and progress the slide because we're starting now. But, hi, everyone. I'm Anna. I'm a designer advocate at Figma, and I'm joined by Ed today. You want to
Hi,
introduce?
Ed, designer at OpenAI.
Cool. And yeah, I know we teased this a bit on social, but yes, for everyone who was making guesses in the threads about what we're going to be talking about today in this very mysterious live stream, we're going to be talking about Codex to Figma. So super excited to dive into this with you all. But yeah, we're just going to kind of kick things off with some context setting in case if anyone is new to MCP, which is what makes all of this possible, or new to Figma as well. We'll share some context there, and then we're going to dive into a demo of like the actual capability in action. So it's going to kind of show us Codex and what it looks like bringing your designs from that into Figma and then back. So super excited for this. All right, we already introduced ourselves, but hello again. All right, so just some context setting. I think for a long time when it comes to product development, I think a big challenge for a lot of teams has always been in some of that misalignment and miscommunication that can happen between design and code. And so at Figma, this is something we at least personally heard a lot from our users. And kind of the first step that we took to this was in creating dev mode. Dev mode was essentially a way for developers to kind of have their own dedicated space and view of Figma so that they can extract important information about the designs that will help them when it comes to actually turning a design into a real life functioning product or feature. So it provides them with context around things like, if you've got a design system, what components are you using? What variables are you using? Also, if you have Code Connect set up for those components as well, they can get the code snippets for the components and patterns that are being used. And then other things around like alignment and spacing and the sizing and positioning of things. But it was kind of like a pretty manual process. Developers have to go in, they'd have to select on the design element, see the details in that inspect panel, and kind of extract that information from there. But a lot of this has changed thanks to AI. So obviously we know, right? AI is really good at coding. And so a lot of engineers naturally have been using a lot more of these different AI agents to help them with their coding process. And so to kind of support that, this is where MCP comes in. It essentially allows teams to be able to automatically bring context from a variety of different tools into their agents. And so for Figma, we developed our own MCP server. And one of the things that it can do is provide that context that lives within Figma, all that design context around components, styles, variables, Code Connect. And rather than engineers having to manually inspect those designs to get that information, if they're using AI agents to take a first pass at coding an app, they can have that information that you would get from dev mode automatically brought to your coding assistant, wherever that lives, to help it with generating code. And so, yeah, AI as a whole, pretty good at code generation. A lot of different code editors that people are using today, right? If you're using like Copilot, Cursor, all those different tools, they're going to allow them to have the context of your actual code base. So the code it's going to generate is a little bit better because it already has that context of all the various like code files that exist. And then the next step to really achieving that high fidelity output with your AI agents is that design context, which is why we built our Figma MCP server. So with coding, I think it's really cool to see how much faster teams are moving. We're even seeing designers dabble into like coding and building experiences themselves. But I think something that I want to acknowledge too is that we've been hearing, people still want a place to be able to converge. And I think that's the role that the canvas in Figma design can help with today. So in terms of like what's still really helpful about a canvas is two things, being able to explore your designs more and also being able to have more of that collaboration with your team. So in terms of exploration, like I have definitely been building some things with AI, but sometimes, at least for me personally, I'm sure some other people resonate with this. When you just want to change the layout of things, maybe you're still experimenting between like, should this be like a grid or should this be like a list of rows? Like, I just want to shift this over and just kind of quickly visualize something before committing to it. For a lot of people, especially designers, it can be a lot easier to have that like hands-on manipulation rather than prompting through code. And then also like being able to experiment with divergent ideas, right? Like when you're coding, sometimes like it's really great. You can build an idea really quickly, but sometimes like you can naturally be more inclined to just continue down the same path. But being able to see different explorations side by side and really experiment with, what are potential different like visual directions I could go in, or what are some like just different ways, totally different ways of like interacting with an interface that people can go with. It's really helpful to be able to still see that on the canvas and especially to work on these different ideas with your teammates together. And then, of course, collaboration. I've had this frustration with working with some teammates where it's like, oh, you need access to this thing. Like, here's a link to like my GitHub repo, and you'll have to download it and set up your own local host yourself. Or we'll have to hop on like a Zoom chat and I can like share my screen with you. Versus like I've been so used to collaborating with other people on Figma, right? Like we've got, you can leave in like comments. A lot of people like bringing in sticky notes from FigJam. There's like abilities to like stamp on things, to vote on ideas. And so I think like something that's really helpful is when you can bring your designs wherever they come from, whether it's Figma or it's code or somewhere else, and just see them side by side and have your teammates leave in comments and collaborate that way. It just makes it a lot easier to kind of hear a bunch of different perspectives and ideas and really make sure that you're building towards the best experience. So within Figma, we have basically all of our file types are multiplayer. I feel like multiplayer has always been core to like our platform and making sure that it's a place for teams to collaborate and come together. But also Figma files are pretty easy for people to share and duplicate. You can just copy a link, invite someone via email or through Slack or our other integrations. And then also if someone wants to riff on your ideas, all they have to do is just copy and paste to make those revisions and take your idea in a different direction that maybe is like better and different from whatever you initially thought it could be. So now that we've done some context setting though, I think like up until this point, there's always been like this difficulty where it's like some people are really comfortable with like starting an idea in code and wanting to like build it out that way. Some people want to start on the canvas. And I think something that we've been thinking about is really not wanting to force anyone to one particular way of working, and also not wanting to force teams into like having people move into a workflow that they're not comfortable with just because their other teammates work a certain way. And so I feel like that's what Code to Canvas is really helping with is, maybe you're an engineer or a technical PM, or maybe you're a designer dabbling in code, and like you want that to be the place where you're doing a lot of design work. But then there's still moments where being able to collaborate and share with others on the canvas to make some different, take some different directions is useful. And so that's kind of why through MCP, we're now able to not only bring context from Figma to code, but also bring your code into Figma. So with that context setting, I'm excited to hand it over to Ed to actually give us a demo of what that looks like.
Thanks, Hannah. So let me hop into Codex. So maybe just some like brief context setting for those who haven't tried Codex before. And if you haven't, you can download it at openai.com/Codex. You don't need a paid account. You can use your free account. And you land in here. Looks kind of familiar, right? A little bit like ChatGPT. except you connect your project here. So if you downloaded something from GitHub, in this case, right, I'm collaborating with Anna on this tap to table kind of like online menu project. So I've opened this here, and I can just type a prompt, and it'll just I'll just ask questions about the repo. So maybe if I just say, what is this? And while that's loading, I can just explain a little bit about a few other things that's going on here. So you can create new threads, you can kind of work in parallel, you can kick off a few things at once. So right, I can just like see if there's any bugs. And the way that I kind of think about this app is it's like a kind of command center for your coding agent. So you can work on multiple projects at a time. You can work on multiple threads at a time. You can also work kind of seamlessly between like local tasks on your computer to cloud tasks that work on your GitHub repo in the cloud. So there's a lot of kind of functionality here, but like just zooming in on what we have with this project. So I've just asked what this is, and then let me just run this real quick. So I can just open this in my localhost, and this is what we've been building. So Anna has built this brilliant kind of online recipe listing website here. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of moving Figma to code afterwards. But for now, right, so the traditional approach that designers have taken is you spec something out in Figma, you hand it off to an engineer, they implement it, you kind of, iterate a bit. And I think until now, the integrations with coding agents have still been that like one-way process. And designers have kind of been like slightly bottlenecked in that, everything is kind of passing through, through one way. But the very cool thing about this integration is it kind of finally closes the loop. So it really becomes this like very, very iterative kind of canvas to code approach. And it's just kind of like generally way more collaborative. So in this case, right, we've taken this website, we built it out into this interactive prototype here. You can click through. But say here we've kind of mocked out some of these recipe listings, but maybe the engineer has kind of, they've taken a first pass at building out some of these like sub pages. So when you click into the recipe, you can, open up the different, different pages. So maybe I want to like bring some of these pages into Figma, iterate on it a little bit, and then push it back. So what I do in the app is if you just type in Figma, it will just pop up this little recommendation to install the MCP. There's another way that you can do this that I can show you afterwards. But basically through this one-click install, it will then pop out a login flow via the browser, whatever browser that you use. And then when I go back in, I do just have to refresh this just so to get the MCP to work. But we're working on like an auto refresh. And then now, if you click into the plus and go into MCP shortcuts, you can now see these two options to work with Figma. And if you want to configure this more, you can go into the settings, you can go into MCP servers, and you can kind of configure things here. But we've put everything in the composer just so it's like super simple to access. Okay, so now I want to generate a Figma design for my website. So I just click here, puts this prompt into the composer. And I'll just take a link to this now, and I'll say, what should we put through on any of these recipes that you'd recommend? Maybe.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be interesting to maybe show capturing like a part of a recipe. So we could do like entire screens, but maybe want to focus on like some of like the different steps, right? How we're walking
Cool.
users through that.
Yeah, I like it. So let's start with this chicken noodle soup, and then maybe we'll pull out some of this like ingredients and instructions part specifically. So here I just type this in. I'd say I want to generate the chicken noodle soup recipe page, and drop it here. And I'll just drop in my Figma link. And while that's going, maybe I can just click through. Actually, I think it might be quite fast, so maybe I'll just watch it go and explain what's going on. So right here we have a few things going on. It's exploring some files, it's running some commands, and it's basically running to get the dev server running, and then it's calling the MCP here. this generate Figma tool, and then it pops open this window. It basically runs the website on your local host and just automatically sends it to Figma. So now if I click back into here, right, it's just kind of dropped it straight in. And the thing that like really blew me away, and when I dropped this in our kind of internal Slack channel, there were like many, like very excited reactions from our designers, is, once I click into these files, this is all kind of responsive. It's all kind of using the same format that we know about Figma. So it's not like a static image, or I don't need to do a bunch of kind of auto layout and kind of, really make things like pixel perfect afterwards. It's kind of like there immediately. So, right, say I wanted to like, just change maybe this like padding between these, specific elements, I could just like reduce that, send it back, and it would be, pretty seamless. But to your point, Anna, I think you said you wanted to focus on like a very specific part, right? So maybe we pull just the ingredients. So here, if I'm correct, I click select element and I'll just click this ingredients part. It'll send that to Figma. I can either click open and it'll open again. I obviously have it open here. And then here, it's just dropped in this like very specific part. Again, all of the styling and everything is correct. So now, right, maybe Anna can now jump in, hop on, kind of, jam on this a little bit like she's doing here. And then we can start to kind of collaborate and again, kind of close that loop. Did you want me to do the Figma to design now straight away? I don't know. Did you want to
Yeah, I
speak
have
to
some
anything?
explorations of some of the different like layout options for the filtering. I'm feeling pretty good about this one. Like I kind of like the order of like the hierarchy and this new reset functionality. So yeah, maybe you could try pushing that back to code.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, so we've shown it going one way. So if I just copy a link now, so I just copy a link to this selection. So this is this filter component. And if I go back to the home page, right here in the home page, we have this filter here on the right. So I just open up Codex, and again, I can either access it from here, so I can just pull Figma content, and I can drop in my link here, and I'm going to say use the Figma MCP to generate code from sorry, I'm going the opposite way, aren't I? I'm going to use the Figma MCP to update my filter on the home page using this component. And then because it's running locally, I should see this update in real time. Let me just run this again. Okay. So I should see it update in real time following the designs that Anna did. And I don't know if while I'm doing that, there's anything you wanted to speak to in the
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I think like this is like context that I wasn't able to share, but like, yeah, when it comes to bringing like your design context like back to code, it's always helpful. Like I found this with a bunch of AI tools, like having your design well structured, layers named so it knows what those things are, like using auto layout. Of course, if you're using a design system, like building things out of components and using variables where you can is always going to help make that context better. And it's going to help make it faster, especially if you're using components from your design system with Code Connect, rather than like the AI having to go through and search through all of your code files for the right components. If it's able to retrieve that component information from Figma directly, it'll also help the generation be a little bit faster too. So that's just some best
cool.
practices to share there.
Cool. So I pasted that in. How does that look? I know you designed the original one.
Yeah.
Does this fit with your vision? So we go here.
No, it's looking, yeah, pretty good actually.
Pretty good. Yeah, I mean, like, I think the crazy thing is just how fast it is to go back and forth now. And,
Mhm.
the thing that I've spoken to a lot of folks on the team about is, just how fast it is possible to get from kind of idea to prototype. And, one very cool thing that I've seen over the past 6 months is a lot of designers who like maybe hadn't coded before, maybe were a little bit like trepidatious to figure out like how do I access, GitHub, and like how do I get through all of these hoops? The great thing about the app in particular is it's just like super easy to download, right? You don't need to, set up anything in the terminal. You can just kind of open it up. And more in our like internal prototyping channel, I'm seeing folks post demos, people that I, didn't know could code, and I, messaged them and like, that's amazing. Like, how did you do that? And they're like, didn't know that I could do this before, and it's just been kind of mind blowing. So I feel like code has become this kind of new tool in the toolbox of many designers. But to your point, I think it's still it doesn't mean that it's like just code and no canvas. I think like particularly with this recent integration and the Figma to code um, integration as well, I've just seen it help design and engineering teams like move way faster to kind of move back and forth
Mhm.
between the two.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to know too, like, as you mentioned, it's so valuable to be able to have like something interactive, like as a way to like test out your design. I guess, yeah, how has your design process changed in the past like year? Because I feel like so much has changed just around like technologically what's possible. But yeah, I'm curious to hear about like your own process. Like, how do you start a project and like go through that design iteration?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Personally, I've always been someone who's coded a lot, so that's kind of always been a part of my workflow. But I think the big change over the past 6 months has really, or even kind of 3 months, to be honest, since December and some of these new model releases, has just been the speed of iteration. So, um, I think the I'll often kind of work in parallel. So a lot of like interaction design will happen in code, and we'll test out, different flows or interaction paradigms, and then we'll spec out a lot of high level IA stuff in Figma, and still we'll get to that kind of like pixel perfect design systems, making sure everything works together. And the fact that you can collaborate, I think within Figma is just like super valuable. But I think one of the biggest changes, which I've also seen across the team, and I was even chatting to one of our content designers the other day, is how close designers can get to prod. So for example, with the Codex app, me and another designer on the team, we've shipped a whole bunch of prod code to the app, and I've seen this across other products as well. And my day to day, like just to give you like a few examples of some useful stuff maybe within the app as well that's relevant, is a lot of designers have kind of started building these skills. So skills are these kind of composable kind of ways to basically bundle up like capabilities or automate end-to-end workflows. So we have a Figma one. We have like image gen. So if you want to put like an image that's been generated using OpenAI's image gen, you can use this skill and a bunch of others. We also have like a UX copy skill that our like content designers have kind of helped iterate on. And like just practically one thing that I do is set up an automation for a few of our products to look at all of the kind of PRs that have been added over the past, say, 24, 48 hours. And if anyone has added any UX copy, like take a look at that copy, run it through the UX copy skill, and like give me a summary. And like that's like a little way, like these like small things that like designers are, you know, really good at like getting in the weeds and really caring about like the polish and the last mile, whether that's like, little parts of UX copy, maybe it's responsiveness stuff. And I feel like little things like this help you stay on top of all of that whilst maintaining the big picture, big design questions and looking to the future and all of that kind of stuff. It just like helps you kind of spread yourself across the product in a really, really expansive way.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I imagine you guys have probably had people who've set up a ton of different cool automations like for others to use. Like, I definitely know, I think even within Figma, we've done a lot of stuff with like UX copy to just make it easier to for our UX writing team to like easily update like all of like the designs and things to like have the latest and greatest in terms of like their work. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
How
really
about you?
cool.
How's it changed your work or the work of your team?
I mean, I just feel like I kind of think of coding now because I feel like before, right, it was very much like the final step. It was like, okay, now you're going to actually like build the thing. But I feel like now it is so useful to have just kind of that like quick and interactive thing. And it's almost like wireframing a design experience, right? Like you're thinking about here's like this page and it's going to navigate to here and stuff. And I felt like, I used to do like the standard diagram. You have like the placeholder, like Figma frames, and you draw like the arrows and stuff. But now I feel like coding has kind of done that for me. Or it's like I'll, mock up something in code and then I'll use like our integration like to be able to generate FigJam diagrams, being like, okay, cool, like you've made this thing. And now I want to also kind of like have that mapped out in a diagram so people can see the high level like navigation of this app. And so like done that too. So, and then I feel like too, accessibility and like responsivity have been things that coding has really helped me a lot with, like in terms of thinking about now it's not like an afterthought of like, oh, how do we do like keyboard navigation for something? It's like you can start testing that out and defining it from the beginning. And same thing with like responsivity too. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna first design in just this set frame because this is like the template that my team has set up. It's like now I can also actually like see how is this responding when I'm like resizing my screen. And that's just like a cool thing to kind of start thinking about from the beginning, when it was kind of more something that I felt like I thought more towards the end of the design process.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think particularly with the skills as well, before every PR that I put up, we also have this like code review feature, so you can do like slash review and it'll do like a code review. But I yeah personally have a few reviews that I go to that are like all design oriented, like as I say, kind of UX copy, accessibility, responsiveness. We have some very cool integrations as well with Alice, our browser, and you can kind of like literally kind of use Playwright to do some kind of browser automation and test it all for you. So yeah, I feel like that last mile, which as you say, is often like an afterthought, you can just bake into the process and it's a continuous thing. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. Something I also want to make sure that we're noting as well is, and I know this is going to be a question that a lot of people are asking, is about design systems. So if you go back to the design that you brought in from like our tap to table app, so like we do have frames and there is like auto layout that is applied to a lot of things. But even if you have like components, it's not something that we're able to bring in yet, where we can say like, oh, these Figma components are aligned with these code ones. But it is something that we are heavily thinking about and like working on prioritizing, just because we do know that is important to like always have design systems built into that flow.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Anything else you want to talk about? I feel like this will probably be people's first time maybe using Codex now that we have like this integration. So is there anything like um any like, I don't know, features that you think that people should know about or start using right away if it's their first time?
Yeah, yeah, I can talk to a little bit, a few things here, and then I think maybe like there's maybe a more philosophical question which I can speak to, which is I do think that you know, it's been amazing to see our internal design team adopt Codex. And, we have these trackers of like how many of the team are like weekly users. And it's kind of crazy. It's like nearly, I forget the last numbers, but it's like close to 100%. And I do think, and I also teach sometimes, and, was teaching a class out last year and spoke to some of my students at the beginning of the class, and I asked them kind of like, how many of you have used these AI tools? Excuse, excuse me. And I think it was like 20, 30%. And then by the end of the class, it was kind of close to 100. And a lot of them, I think, were just, came up to me and said, I don't really use these things. I didn't really think they were for me. And having used them and like seeing how expansive it can be as a creative, as a designer, and the possibilities that opens up of what you can build, I think was kind of really eye-opening. So at a philosophical level, I would just say, if you're kind of skeptical or you haven't used it before, just like give it a go. And I do think the kind of the main barrier is your own imagination. Like if there's something you don't understand, right? Like, opening this, we've tried to make it as accessible as possible. It looks kind of familiar, it looks a little bit like ChatGPT, but there's still a lot of stuff that I imagine if you're new to coding, maybe you don't, it looks a little new, right? Like there's some branch and there's, some permission stuff. But the cool thing about Codex is it's also like a tool to teach you. So if there's anything you don't understand, you can just ask it, right? So you can be like, it says, oh, npm run build pass. Like, you can ask, like, what does that mean? What's it doing? Why? And it becomes this kind of teacher as well that helps you, up level yourself as well and kind of learn a bit more. So that's
Yeah.
like at a philosophical level. I would just say if there's a project that you've ever wanted to try or something that you thought like, oh, that's like way beyond me, like I would kind of, yeah, kind of invite people to kind of think expansively. And you're probably going to be pleasantly surprised at what you can build. But in terms of here, yeah, so I think there's a few things worth calling out. So one thing that I did mention is you can work in like different environments. So you can either work locally, if I create a new project, I can work in a new work tree. And that's like a kind of technical term, but it basically means that you can work in parallel. So at a very simple level, it basically means that it takes a copy of what you're working on now, and you can then work on a copy of it. So instead of working on one thing at a time, you can work on two, or maybe you make 5 work trees, you can work on 5, and you can build like 5 features in parallel. So I find this really powerful. And when you're running, say you're doing a front end project and you're running localhost, you can then have like 5 different tabs and browsers and kind of work on all these crazy things at the same time. Um, you can work in a cloud environment. So if you connect to your GitHub, as I say, you can send something to the cloud, shut your laptop, go off, kind of open your phone, open up the ChatGPT app, and you can kind of carry on coding, on your walk home. So that's also very cool. So you're no longer kind of tied to your computer. One thing here as well is, once you do make changes, you can then bring up a diff panel on the right here, and you can start to see some code changes. We have a terminal built in. So if you do want to run like different commands, like maybe you want to, open localhost and things like that, you can open it here. If you want to automate that, you can click this run action button. So here, if I just type in some run commands, and soon we're going to make this kind of way simpler. So you can just kind of click run and it will automatically do it for you. I can then basically program it. So if I want to test it, I just click this and it will just do the same thing every time. And then it will just open localhost, which is very cool. So, I've been coding, I'll just like push play, it opens, check it. So that's kind of fun. And this is like a very popular feature that people love. You can pop it out. So this is like I think for my like truly like vibes based projects, maybe I'll pop open the local host. I'll have the pop-up window down here and I'll just like, jam. It's less important maybe to see the code and things. So if I'm just working on like a pure personal prototype, obviously if you're doing something that's going to prod, then you want to have a better handle on code review and things. But still, this is something that people have loved a lot. And then, as I mentioned earlier on, automations, you can automate work. So you can basically run the same thread in different kind of like on a schedule. So we're actually updating this a little bit at the moment. But for example, say every 9 a.m. I want to look for any new changes in my repo that added new text, and use the UX copy skill to give me a perspective on how to improve it. I can then basically create this, and it will every morning do this. So every morning I'll open my computer, I'll just have some stuff ready for me that I can send to the team. And then I mentioned skills. These are fun, fun ways to kind of automate work. So, we talked about this is one that I use a lot actually. It's from Vercel, but like, we just implemented this thing here. And if I type in backslash, I can search for the name of the skill. I can also type in the $sign and it will just show that. And I can basically under the hood, what these things are basically long instructions that you give to the model that are filled with kind of things that are So you can kind of repeat. So maybe you can put some scripts in there to like, add tests and things like that. So I can say, use the Vercel best practice skill to suggest improvements for my website. And it will go through, it will take that like specialist knowledge and it will basically kind of extend the capability. So you can do this in many, many ways. So we have as I mentioned, we have a playwright skill, so you can test browser responsiveness. You can have an accessibility skill, a
Mhm.
UX copy skill. So yeah, there's been like an explosion internally of all of these different skills that different people are building. And it's been very cool as well to see the design team add to that themselves. So here, right, look through and it said, okay, so, there's some inefficiencies here that it could do, and then I can just say, fix it and create a branch. So yeah, there's a lot under
Very
the hood,
cool.
but the main thing is you can just open it and you can just start, and you don't really need to know too much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, like you could ask it to explain things or like not even always have to tell the AI what to do, but like ask it like, where could I find like this kind of information or can you explain this concept to me? So yeah, that's awesome. And I know we weren't able to show it during this, but like when you um enabled the Figma integration, there is OAuth. So for y'all who are concerned about security, it is going to like go through OAuth for you to actually like make sure that you are properly connecting it to between your accounts. Um, yeah. Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead. You're gonna
Oh
say
yeah,
something.
just a flag. We also have a bunch of safety and security features, built into Codex. So we have a permission structure. So on default permissions, before running things like say it's trying to access, the internet or it's trying to run a certain command that changes something on your computer, it will ask you for permission. So we recommend people use that, and over time it learns what you give permission about, and it will kind of improve that as well. So yeah, we really recommend building with those kind of features.
Mhm. Awesome. Cool. Well, I feel like, yeah, we're actually a little bit over time. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much, Ed, for not only like showing us the integration in action, but also for like sharing almost like a masterclass into like how you approach designing with code. Also, this is recorded, so if anyone wants to watch it later on, it'll be available. Just keep an eye on our socials. And of course, we'd love for y'all to actually give it a go, share feedback on how it's working, bringing your code to Figma and back. And I think we also have some more details on at least, I think both the Figma and the OpenAI blogs as well. So if you want more details there, check those out.
Yeah, if you have any feedback, please feel free to send it to me. I'm very curious to hear as well. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Anna. See ya.
Bye.